Good afternoon, Mike. How you doing? We're here in your office in Birch, Carter, and Johnson in beautiful downtown Memphis. And you've been kind enough to give us a little time to share some thoughts with us. On behalf of the college, thank you very much.
Bless you.
Uh, Folks, you need to know that Mike Cody has served the people of this state as a lawyer for 58 years. Early in his career, he served on the Memphis City Council and was chair of the state Democratic Party. He was active in various political campaigns for Democrats and then became U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Tennessee. He then moved on to serve the people as Attorney General of the state of Tennessee, and during that period, he argued 4 cases before the Supreme Court of the United States. He went back into private practice, and with a short exception of public service and one time with a law firm in Nashville, he has been with this firm for about 50 years, I guess. We're close. During that process of 58 years of practicing law, he's managed to run over 80,000 miles. And for those of you who keep up with such things, that's more than 3 times around the equator. He's competed in 14 Boston marathons. He's run a mile as fast as 4 minutes and 24 seconds. So in addition to his honors as a lawyer, he also has been inducted into the Tennessee Sports Hall of Fame. He helped found and has served as co-chair of the Society of Attorneys General Emeritus. And we're going to talk with him this afternoon about some of his experiences practicing law. How was my 10,000-foot flyover, Mike?
It's good, yeah. Matter of fact, you come to light. You can ask me.
Well, we'll try to dig into the details here. I want to take you to April 3rd, 1968.
Right.
What were you doing that day?
I was sitting here in the office, April 3, 1968. It was a morning. And I got a call from the American Civil Liberties Union in New York and in Atlanta. Kind of Mel Wolf in New York and Chuck Morgan in Atlanta. And they informed me that Dr. King had been served with an injunction to prevent him from marching in behalf of the sanitation workers who were on strike here in Memphis. And where our firm represent him on behalf of the ACLU to get that injunction lifted. And I responded, this is that morning, that I would. And then I walked across the hall where my mentor and boss and the best trial lawyer in Memphis, Lucius Birch, at his office, and asked Lucius that I wanted him to do it because it was above my pay grade. I'd just been out of law school 5 or 6 years at that time, 68. And with some conditions, he agreed that he would.
Now, when I said earlier that we were in your office, and then you just referred to receiving the call in your office, and I know from our conversation the other day that Mr. Birch's office was across the hall. Are we actually in the same office?
No.
That you had in 1960?
There's some liberties because not make it too long. In 1968, I came to work here in 1961. So I'm pretty close here to, like you say, 58 years of practicing law here in this place. But in 68, we were in a building that's adjacent to this one, but connected to it. And in 1970, we bought this building, which I'm sitting in right now, and cut back through. So it's the office that's really down the hall from here.
Okay.
We just have to move Birch and I into another office, but right down the same hall.
Okay. So you grew up here. You went to, I'm going to assume, a racially segregated high school. East, West.
Yes, absolutely. I graduated in 1954, and that's the year Brown versus Board of Education was decided by the Supreme Court So Memphis was locked down, segregation all of my years, certainly through high school.
Well, then you went to a college that just down the street here, Southwestern Now Roads College. My guess is it was not integrated.
Not integrated.
And there weren't, if I had to guess, too many African Americans in your class at the University of Virginia.
There was not. There were 3 women in my class, but even the University of Virginia did not allow blacks or women in the undergraduate program, but in the professional schools, law school, nursing, women could get in, but there were no blacks.
Okay. And then you came back home to Memphis, and we'll talk about that more a little later. But Mr. Birch was a white male, obviously. So here you are, starting your career in a segregated city, a city that had seen racial issues. Your old high school had just been barely integrated, and there had been some issues with that. And what made you decide that you would take the position supporting Martin Luther King and therefore the sanitation workers, many of whom were African Americans? And why would you and your firm do that in 1968?
Gosh, every question you ask me, John, requires a little bit of a longer answer than you want.
No, I want it all.
I graduated from Southwestern Rhodes College, 1958, and as late as April my senior year, I had a fellowship to go to Duke, get a PhD and teach political science. That's what I intended to do. I got turned around in the last few months of my college years to go to law school with the idea that if I wanted to teach, I can teach in law school. If I wanted to practice law, I could practice law. So I went up to Virginia, and when I got ready, between my second, third year of law school, I called my father. I said, Dad, everybody up here is getting ready to clerk in the summer for law firms in D.C. or New York or Virginia, somewhere. I'd like to clerk in Memphis, but do you know any lawyers that I could call and see if I could clerk there? And my father was a accountant at Standard Oil Company. And he said, I don't really know any lawyers, but Lucius Birch represents the Standard Oil Company, and I hear he's the best lawyer in Memphis. And I'm sure he would talk to you. So I called Birch, and I said, Mr. Birch, I'd like to clerk with y'all this next summer. And he said, well, son, we've never had any clerks. I don't think you could do anything for us. But if you want to come and spend the summer here, I'll give you a place in the library to sit, and I'll give you something to do. But we're not going to pay you anything. So I worked all summer with Mr. Birch and worked at night at a warehouse in order to make my money. I needed to go back to school because Birch literally wasn't going to pay me anything. Into that summer, Birch said, I talked to the 2 partners, Birch and Porter and Johnson, and they all felt like it wouldn't be fair not to pay you anything. So we're going to give you $100 for the summer, and we appreciate your work there. So I said, thank you. And I went all back up to the University of Virginia, and in October of that year, I interviewed with firms in New York, Philadelphia, D.C., and other places because I had no intention of coming back to Memphis. And I tentatively took a spot with the Deckert firm in Philadelphia, which at that time was the largest firm in the city of Philadelphia, at $800 a month, which was a big salary in those days for a kid like me. So Thanksgiving, I came back and I called Mr. Birch and I said, I'd like to catch up with you, tell you what's going on. And he said, well, come have Thanksgiving dinner with me. So I went out and had Thanksgiving dinner at his home in Collierville, told him about my great fortune. And he said, well, I'm proud of you, and that's nice, and that's a lot of money. But you don't want to go to Philadelphia. I said, well, I don't want to go to Philadelphia. He said, you need to come here. He said, civil rights are cracking up here. I need some help. We need good lawyers that'd be willing to work with me and bring some justice to some areas here in Memphis, in addition to represent the railroad and insurance companies and all the other things we did. And I said, well, what about the money? And he said, He said, I'll do better than the Philadelphia firm's doing. Okay, got my attention. And I said, well, okay, maybe tell me a little bit more about that. He said, I'm going to pay you $300 a month, not $800, but I'll pay you $300 a month. But I'm going to give you half of all your fees. Well, I didn't know that I wouldn't have any fees for about 5 years. So I took the job, and I know it was, I never looked back. Lucius was a bigger than life kind of a character. He's in the college, of course, along with John Porter, the other major partner, and we did our lot of work, railroads, insurance companies, all that I mentioned. But he was working to integrate zoo, parks, playgrounds, department stores, transportation, everything else. And so from 61 until 68, I worked with Lucius in addition to our regular work, doing that kind of work. And that's how I got involved with the ACLU. And I became, by 67, the chairman of the ACLU here in Memphis, and then on their national board. So when I got the call on the morning of April 3rd, 1968, I got the call simply because I was the only lawyer in Memphis that they knew. It wasn't a merit selection. And but this guy who had brought me down here to do civil rights work, as I say, was just across the hall.
So you and Mr. Birch undertook the representation of Dr. King, and my memory is that you met with him that day at the Lorraine Motel.
The afternoon of April 3rd, we did. ACLU arranged that meeting because Birch wanted to personally meet with Dr. King.
Had you met with him before that date?
Had not. We were not involved in a sanitation strike. As a matter of fact, there was another law firm, which was the only integrated law firm in Memphis, the Ratner, Sugarman, and Lucas firm. They had been handling the work for the strikers. So when we got hired by the ACLU, we folded them into our team. And so when we met with Dr. King that afternoon, it was our lawyers, four of us from here, Birch Porter, and one of the lawyers from the Sugarman firm, Walter Bay.
So you met, there was, I went through the Civil Rights Museum at the Lorraine Motel recently, and Dr. King's team, I think, had 2 rooms there side by side, if I remember, it's 306 and 307.
That's right.
And you met in 307. And who was there besides the members of your firm and Dr. King?
Well, it's bizarre to think back of it. It's been 52 years now. There were 2 twin beds in that room.
Yeah.
And the suits, the lawyers, Birch, me, Charlie Newman, Dave K. Wood, Walter Bayard. We were on one of the twin beds. Then knee to knee, there was Dr. King, Ralph Abernathy, Jesse Jackson, Andy Young, and Jim Lawson on the other side. And the entire 2-hour conversation was basically between Mr. Birch and Dr. King, with the rest of us just sort of listening in, and Andy Young participated a little bit, and mainly it was Birch and Dr. King.
Now, for people who aren't familiar with the Civil Rights Museum here in Memphis, it is at the Lorraine Motel, and if you tour this exhibitions, you end up in that very room,
Right.
room 307, and those beds are still there.
Right. What they've done at the museum, they've divided it so that you got a walkway through it. So there's a glass so that you could see in the room, and the little table was there, and the picture that I have on the wall there is Dr. King. Oh, I'll give you a copy of that, John.
Oh, I would love that. Thank you.
Walking into the room, holding the injunction, and we are waiting in the room. And then another picture, which I'll give you, is us going into court the next morning.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, so I remember seeing the signs, photographs of the signs of the sanitation workers, almost all of whom, maybe all of whom, were black, and holding up signs, and it just hit me every time I see it, and it's hitting me right now. The sign said, "I am a man."
Powerful.
Very powerful. Very, very
And
powerful.
that happened because of the way the strike got started. The picture was made by Ernest Withers, who's a famous black photographer here. We're very famous. And he just happened to get that picture of all those men getting ready to line up and march with those I am a man sign. But the strike got started when two garbage workers were sitting on the back of a garbage truck having their lunch when it was kind of rainy. And they got under the cover of the truck. Somebody inside the truck hit the compactor and it crushed those men and killed both of them. And they found out there's no insurance. There's nothing for the families, not even enough money to bury them. And that's how the history of that "I am a man" for the sign came up. And so it's a cut stone for the strike.
I'm going to deviate from this story for just 1 second. I've got to ask this because I know that there's going to be fellows in the college and law students watching this video, and they're going to be thinking the same question I'm about to ask. You're a young lawyer in Memphis. You're with a very prominent, more senior lawyer, Mr. Birch, but you're taking on the man. You're taking on the cause of people who have been trampled on for 200 years. As you're going through this, and none of you had been involved in the work with the zoo and with the schools and all that, but were you thinking at the time what this was going to do to your career, what it was going to do to your business, what it would do to your children as they went through Memphis life and social life?
Not at all, John. Of course, working on liberal causes or civil rights causes in the years between 62 and 68 as my children began to be born. They're still young then at that time. But there was a lot of kickback, from your friends in the country club or businesses you represent, whatever. But the King thing, we knew that there would be some, but just marginally different than what we'd already been doing. But what you have to remember is when we took on that engagement, which we, of course, didn't charge for as a pro bono engagement, nobody had any idea the King was going to get killed that night. So it was just going to be another appearance for a civil rights leader. King is a little different, but we had those kind of cases in the federal courts before. And so even when I heard the King make his last speech, not knowing that he was going to get killed the next day, it didn't have the same feeling as it had later on.
Sure, sure. So that's where I wanted to go next. You got to hear the speech?
Yeah, I interviewed Andy Young, who later became the mayor of Atlanta and the United States ambassador to the UN, and Jim Lawson, who's the local minister. They were our witnesses in court. And I interviewed them about what the case was going to be about, what they're going to be asked by Birch. And then it got to be late in the evening, and King went on down to the Mason Temple, and I went down with him to be there and heard that speech.
And I've seen excerpts of it, most recently at the museum and my tour. It's powerful.
Huge.
Was it full? Was it?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it's packed. Originally, Abernathy, King's aide, was sent over there to make the speech. King had a bad cold. He was exhausted. He didn't intend to make that speech, and he sent Abernathy over there, not thinking, because it was raining, and he didn't think there'd be much of a crowd anyway. And Abernathy called back and said to King, this isn't my crowd. You're going to have to come over here. The place was packed. When we got over there, it was packed with garbage workers, their families, union people, ministers. The church, it was April, but there were tornadoes coming into the area, and they had opened the windows. There was no air conditioning to let some air in there because it was very warm, and the rain was coming in. There's a big ceiling fan up at the top. As the wind blew it, you could hear that fan clack as it went along. And it was a very eerie scene in terms of just the weather. People have been killed in Little Rock and in Oklahoma as that storm was coming our way. And King made that last speech. And the thing is, when he left the Lorraine Motel, he didn't have first note card. He didn't intend to make the speech. And that's what came out was the not top speech, which some people feel like he was had a premonition about his death.
Yeah. So the next day, you find yourself in federal court trying to get the injunction lifted.
Right.
And what role did you play in that hearing?
If you'll see the picture, which I'll send you, it gives my role explicitly. It shows me carrying the books. I've got Birch's raincoat and the law books and the files, and Birch is following along behind me. And that's the proper relationship we had. And that's why I say in the courtroom, again, like in the meeting with Dr. King, none of us asked a single question. Lucius Birch, American College lawyer of par excellence, he did all the work. And of course, we helped as young lawyers do with your senior partner.
So how'd the hearing turn out?
We put on our proof after the city took up the whole morning with proof about how if King came here, there'd be violence because there'd been violence with an earlier march. People had been killed, and that he needed police testify about the possibility of danger, not only to the city and people or property, but also Dr. King. And so we put on our proof after lunch to show that it would be a safer march if Dr. King and his organization were doing it and doing it properly and organized like they'd done other peaceful marches, than to have King locked up in the marshal's custody and people mad and having to march leaderless. And by the end of the day, the city pretty much had agreed, and Judge Brown was pretty much giving us signals that he felt that was going to be the case. And also, with the law was on our side. Immensely, we had a right to demonstrate it, protest it, and we copied an order that Judge Frank Johnson down in Alabama used in some other injunction case, which provided that you would have only 6 marchers abreast. You'd have room on the sides for the police to be present. You'd have monitors and marshals all along the route. You'd have radio contact with the police. So that was our case. We showed how we could do that march and do it peacefully. And so Judge Brown called us back in his chambers and said, I'm going to allow the march to take place. Y'all prepare an order, bring it over in the morning, and I will enter it. I took back the Lorraine Motel a lawyer from Chicago named Chauncey Estridge, who was King's personal lawyer. And he had flown in for the hearing, but he was not at the counsel table with us. He's back in the audience, but he was allowed to go back in Judge Brown's chambers. And so when Judge Brown made that announcement, I took him back to the Lorraine Motel, and before I was gone 15 minutes from that time, we're driving home, the King was shot.
How did you feel when you owed that base?
You know, it's funny to think, John. I felt like I did every other time in my life for the first 5-6 years I worked with Lucius. I got to get to a phone and call Lucius and find out what we do. Here we just been in court and our client's dead. Or they say he was shot. We didn't know he was dead when it first came on the radio. And so I rushed in my house when I got home to get to the telephone, which was in the kitchen, to call Lucius, find out what was I supposed to do. It's hard for me to make a decision because I didn't know what to do. First, I didn't know what to do either, frankly, but that was my inclination. So I swung the swinging door open into the kitchen to get to the phone, and my son, who was 2 years old at that time, was walking toward it. The door hit him in the face, knocked his front teeth out. And so I'm sitting there with a dish towel wrapped up with ice, trying to keep his mouth from bleeding, and the phone rings. It's the police department. So I never had to call anybody. The police called me. and they said there's disturbances starting down in South Memphis, and there are kids up in the top of the Claiborne Temple, which is a Union headquarters, and they're throwing paving stones out at the police, and the police are going to have to go in there and clean it out, and they use tear gas. We're afraid that's going to escalate the violence. And can you find Jim Lawson, the strike leader, and get him to talk the kids out of the church? And so they picked me up, took me back downtown in the middle of all that disorder, and I found Jim Lawson. You got it,
So, and I think I seen a picture of that too.
It was a bad scene.
You sort of stuck out.
Yeah, nobody looked like me now there. And matter of fact, electric stores were being broken into, fires had started, hoses were everything. They were hosing down fires and people running around looting stuff. And I'm still in my court suit, and nobody else looks that way. And that's probably a fearsome situation for me.
Oh, I bet it was very, very scary.
But we could talk about that, John, a long time, but it was just 2 days, and none of us knew what would happen in those 2 days, and it was very consequential.
You are quoted as saying, anyway, we'll see if it's true. A lot of people in Memphis were sorry that Dr. King got killed, but they were more sorry that he'd gotten killed in Memphis.
Same as in Dallas. When John Kennedy was killed in Dallas, they were sorry that he'd been killed, but they were more sorry he'd been killed in Dallas. And that's the same feeling in Memphis. People were just embarrassed. They were, that was their first thought. Why did King have to get killed in Memphis? He got killed here in Memphis because that's where James Earl Ray finally tracked him down.
Right. So I want to move on to other parts of your career, but I got to ask you a story. I came in from Covington, came down Highway 51, came down Danny Thomas Boulevard through, I guess you'd call that North Memphis. Oh, Raptors. And the signs of poverty are on both sides of the street as far as you can look.
Right.
I've been to the south side of Memphis.
Poorest city almost in the United States.
Is it really?
Almost. Detroit tops us occasionally.
You've worked to help people for your career, 58 years. How does it make you feel that here we are, 51 years after Martin Luther King's death, and we still have neighborhoods like that and all of the social issues that we see every single day? Teenage pregnancy rate,
Sure.
all this sorts of
It's tragic. And in order to appreciate it, you have to understand that Memphis lives in the middle of the Delta. The Delta was very prosperous when you had slaves, and very prosperous when you had sharecropping before machines took over everything. Now all of those people have moved from the Delta farmlands into places like Memphis. They got no jobs. They got poor education. They've been discriminated against for centuries through slavery and then Jim Crow. And we've never integrated our schools. We've still got segregated schools. The rich schools get the money, and the poor schools don't get the money. Our biggest industry is warehousing. Warehousing's just like sharecropping. It's a minimum wage. You work until you can't lift boxes anymore, and then they're through with you. And it's just a sad thing. It's not a evil thing that Memphis wants to do. It's just that's the condition. And people that make money in any city want to keep wages as low as they can. But if you're here making $8 or $9 an hour, where are you ever going to get out of poverty or get an education or have a home or anything else? So you just keep working on it, John. You don't quit. When I asked Jim Lawson the week after Dr. King was killed, I said, what do we do now? And he said, well, these garbage workers, not only did they have poor pay, terrible working conditions, discriminated against, they couldn't hire a lawyer.
Okay, let's move on, if we could, from
68.
For 1968, here we have 51 years left.
You wondered what I was doing my law practice.
Well, that is interesting. I guess there were no billable hour requirements, are there?
There's no time sheets, no billable hours. And I had a senior partner that had my back. In other words, to protect me against, if I was a lawyer by myself or another law firm in Memphis, and I started representing ACLU or even in this case with Dr. King, they would not have been happy with that at all. But Birch was willing to have my back. But at the same time, he expected me to do my share of the FELA work, automobile accidents, contested divorce cases, will contests, all of that. You didn't get a free ride just because you were handling civil rights stuff.
Sure.
And so he was very, very serious about us not only doing good work in the community, but making a living practicing law.
Right. So he is, I guess, your principal mentor. I'm sure you've had many people help you over the years. We all have, but he's the one who brought you along.
Well, he brought me back to Memphis to practice law. He nurtured me in the early practice how to be a lawyer. He was a big diver, skin diver, scuba diver, and hiker and all. And so he had no sons. And so I got to travel with him whenever he went on trips, and we talked, and I just learned everything I could from it.
Did you ever speculate, I guess would be the best word, about where your career would have gone if you had not had the benefit of his mentorship?
Well, as a starter, I would have retired from Decker, having handled FELA cases for the Pennsylvania Railroad all my life. And I'd be a Philadelphia lawyer. But having come back to Memphis, the thing it gave me is the broadest possible practice. We handled everything. Birch would, if somebody wanted an antitrust case, Birch said, sure, we have an antitrust case. And he would. Things were simpler then. Tax cases, we had tax fraud cases. We did every kind of case. We would have 2 jury trials going on at the same time. And we'd be waiting for a jury and trying a case before another jury. And we were trial lawyers. And from 61 until really 77, that's what I did. My main clients were the Illinois Central Railroad, Hartford Liberty Mutual Insurance Company, those kinds of planes were.
So you worked in the McGovern campaign. You worked in the Carter campaign. They didn't turn out too well in Tennessee, either one. Now, Carter's turned out in ours. That's right. He is dead.
We bet right on that horse. But I started out with handling, first was Lyndon Johnson's campaign in 64 when he was running first time after John Kennedy had been assassinated with Hubert Humphrey. And I was in that campaign, and then I was handling old Senator Al Gore's campaign in 1970. And then there was Muskie, and there was McGovern, and there were, I was chairman of the Democratic Party. So there's all those guys we went through, none of which were very successful after Carter. Well, Clinton, of course, was successful.
So let's talk about the decision to leave the law firm and become U.S. Attorney for the Western District.
Well, let me just say I left on a sort of a piecemeal basis in 1975 when I ran at large for the Memphis City Council and got elected. But that was a part-time position so that you went to the city council meetings and voted, but you still had your law practice. And so that was not a big divorce from my law firm. I had to watch the ethics issues, but as long as you were careful about that, I could have my job here at Birch Porter Johnson, still be on the city council. But in 1976, when Jimmy Carter got elected president, they called and asked me if I wanted to be the United States attorney. And I couldn't turn it down. And so I served as, that made me have to leave the law firm for 4 years and completely divorce myself from the firm. And Carter was only a one-term president. So when 81 came and Reagan was the new president, I was out. You didn't stay U.S. attorney when there's a new president. So I came back here to my law firm.
Now, I read in one of the articles I looked through to prepare for this interview that somebody told you when you became U.S. attorney, and I'm not going to get this quote exactly right, but worse to the effect of um, a ignorant man doesn't deserve this much power and a smart man doesn't want it.
Not quite.
Not quite. Okay, what was
It was Tom Turley, who was my predecessor as U.S. attorney. He was a tough-nosed Republican, been there 8 years before I took his place. He had pictured Geronimo the Indian over his desk there at the back, a great big poster-sized picture of Geronimo. He was quite a guy. And he sat down and he said, Cody, I don't have much to tell you about this job, but I'll tell you this. This job has more power than a good man would want to have or a bad man ought to have.
that's what?
In other words, it was. I mean, you know, as a United States attorney with an investigative grand jury, it is a huge amount of power and a lot of responsibility. And of course, during those days, you know, we put Governor Blanton in prison. We investigated the Fords, the butchers, all kinds of organized crime cases. It was a big job. And I never thought of anything except that job while I was gone. And when it's over, I came back here. But I still had the idea of politics. And so in 82, I ran for mayor. And I was a center candidate, and there wasn't any room in the center. And so I came in. I lost the runoff. And I wasn't elected. And I thought, well, that really is the end. Came back here, merged border, where they always take me back. And that was in 1982. I practiced law about a year, and then the Supreme Court called and appointed me to Attorney General. So I left for another 4 years and went to become the Attorney General.
Before we get to your stint as Attorney General of the state of Tennessee, I want to ask you about the indictment of the governor, Ray Blanton, I'm sorry. This is before my time in Tennessee. I moved here in 1981, but it was a very, very pivotal time in Tennessee history. And can you give people from around the country and people in Canada a thumbnail sketch of what that controversy was about and the timing of it and how it affected the next governor?
Yeah, okay. Let me, I'm trying to make it clear, although it's a pretty complicated situation. I was appointed by a Democratic president. I'd been chairman of the Democratic Party. I was, all my credentials were Democrats, and that's the way it works. The president's Democrat, the U.S. attorney's Democrat. But the tradition of the office is you're not partisan when you're in that position. So I started, and when I got there, we began, along with the Middle District in Nashville. A lawyer up there by the name of Hal Farton was the U.S. attorney in Nashville. And we worked together and made that Blanton investigation and found out what he was doing was he and his associates were selling pardons. If you pay enough money, you could get out of jail. And we had some really serious, we had some murderers that had paid their way out of prison. And the money went to Blanton's organization. And he had bagged people that went around and collected it. And not only was he doing it in the prisons, he did it to liquor establishments through the Alcohol Beverage Commission. If you wanted to stay out after hours, if you wanted to sell liquor, you'd have a license. You paid the money, and you got the protection. And so we put probably 30 people in prison during that investigation. And
Well, it actually gave rise to Blanton being removed from office early.
Right. What we found out, and I'm sitting in a chair now, it was given to me by Lamar Alexander, who was the governor that followed Blanton. But what happened is during Blanton's last months and weeks, really weeks, we found out about what he'd been doing, selling people out of prison. And he had about 15 to 20 more people that he had taken money from that he was getting ready to let out of prison. I mean, bad people. And so Bill Leach was the attorney general at that time. And Hal Hardin and I, worked with Bill Leach. Leach worked with the Speaker of the House and the Speaker of the Senate and with the incoming new administration. And we basically took over the governor's office and swore Lamar Alexander in early to keep Blanton from pardoning those people.
And just so people understand, at that time, the Senate was ruled by a lieutenant governor who was a Democrat.
Right. Everybody was Democrat in the room except Lamar Alexander.
Right. And Lamar Alexander, I think you told me this the other day, refused to be sworn in unless he was supported by
all the Democrats.
All the Democrats.
Because it's very unusual. Basically, we were legally correct. Once the election had taken place, it had been certified before the end of the year. Lamar wasn't scheduled. The ceremony was going to be after the first of the year. But he had already been certified as the incoming governor, but he had been sworn in. So all we were doing is we got the Supreme Court to swear him in early and locked up Blanton's office and put FBI agents in the front of it and didn't let him sign those pardons.
And also locked up Blanton.
And locked up Blanton later.
A fascinating story. There's actually a movie about it.
Marie, yeah.
Yeah, fascinating story.
So I'm like, we can't keep doing this, John. Marie's lawyer was Fred Thompson. And Fred became a United States Senator as a result of being Marie's lawyer and putting Blanton in jail.
Yes, I did. It is, as I'm relatively new Tennessean, 38 years, but I've had an opportunity to meet all those characters in my time here, and it's just marvelous. And quite frankly, the courage that all of you showed to root out that corruption, especially you. It was your own party.
Well, it's Hal Hardin's party too.
Yeah, and Hal,
we were all Democrats, and President Carter was the president. And Blanton was the Democratic governor, and John Wilder was the Democratic speaker. So it was Supreme Court were all elected as Democrats.
Who was the Speaker of the House then?
Speaker of the House was Ned McWhorter.
Ned McWhorter, who later became governor. Right.
Sure did.
Right. Well, tremendous courage shown by all of you. So in Tennessee, we have a strange way to select the Attorney General. The Attorney General doesn't run in a popular election, but he or she is chosen by the Supreme Court to serve an 8-year term.
Only state in the country that does that.
And you served 4.
I served 4. I could have served the 8, but I had one child at University of Virginia and one child at Center College, and I think the joint tuition of those 2 kids was maybe $40,000, and the salary was $60,000. And so 4 years was all the fun I could have, and I resigned after 4 years and retired back to private practice.
So you spent, during that 4-year period, you had the opportunity to argue 4 cases before the United States Supreme Court, and my memory is you batted .750. That is, you won 3 out of 4. Yeah. So tell us about the fleeing felon argument before the United States Supreme Court.
That's the one I lost.
Yeah.
And
sorry about that.
That was the first one I argued. I was in the Supreme Court 7 times myself, once with Lucius Mertz, and then once twice when a member of my staff argued there, but I personally argued 4 of them. And the first one was a case that had already been filed when I became Attorney General in 1984. It was already making its way up, and the court granted cert. And I inherited that case. But it was the case that where a Memphis police officer had shot a person running away from a nighttime robbery and killed him. Turned out it was a 16-year-old kid. And the state law said the police could shoot a fleeing fellow. And the plaintiffs were alleging that that law was too strenuous. And the Supreme Court showed that that's inappropriate. And the Supreme Court did. They ruled against us and said that the policeman cannot shoot a fleeing felon unless a felon looks to be a danger to the police officer, or if he escapes, to sue someone else. You can't just say, stop or I'll shoot you, and don't know whether the guy's armed or anything else.
But you got asked a tough question during that oral argument.
I did.
Were you prepared for that question?
Not very well. I thought I'd prepared for everything, but I think it was Justice Blackmun on the court at that time. The Tennessee's law simply said you could shoot a fleeing felon. So the justice asked me, said, now, General Cody, let's assume, and I think it's correct, that Tennessee has an antitrust law that makes it a felony to violate that law. Are you saying that if Tennessee Bureau of Investigation or a police officer goes out to a guy that's running a big company in Nashville, he's got to arrest him for antitrust violation, and they say, we're going to arrest you for antitrust violation. The guy jumps up from his desk and starts running toward the door. Are you saying the police officer can shoot him? I said, well, that's what the law says. But that's not what this case is about. This is a nighttime burglary of a maybe occupied residence, and we don't know whether the guy's armed or not. But I got 6. I got 3 votes out of 6 in that case. The rest of them, I won pretty easily.
Well, let's move on to a couple other things. Well, I got to ask you, and this is unfair. One of your partners told me that you represented pornographers too.
No, that's not true.
Oh, it is.
What they're talking about is part of the ACLU work. I filed suits to have the Tennessee obscenity law declared unconstitutional, and I filed a suit to have the Memphis Censor Board declared unconstitutional. This was in the 60s and maybe early 70s. We had a censor board that the censors wouldn't allow Ingrid Bergman films to be shown because she was living in sin with Rossellini. They wouldn't let Spanky and Our Gang movies be shown in Memphis because they had black and white kids together. Wouldn't let Charlie Chaplin movies be shown because he was a communist, they thought. All of those, they could ban any movies they wanted to. And so when a movie got banned for one of these reasons, ACLU represented them. And so I had, in my career, both of those laws declared unconstitutional. And just like the judge on the Supreme Court, Judge Creason was on the Tennessee Supreme Court. And I'm up there arguing this case about a movie, I think it was called Women of the World. And it had some people jumping up and down without tops on, things like that. It was not very risque. But Judge Creason, in the middle of my argument, he said, well, let me just, Mr. Cody, let me ask you this. I grew up in Memphis, and I knew your mom and daddy. What would they think about you representing this movie? That was about as hard as the question from the Supreme Court of the United States.
Well, I just want the record to be clear that I was given that information by one of your partners, Jeff Feibelman, who's a fellow in the college, and I think he violated at least 2 parts of the code of conduct in misleading me there.
Well, Jeff testified as an expert witness that the movie wasn't obscene.
No.
Yes, absolutely. Well, who else was I going to get except my law partner to testify?
Are you, you still here at the firm. You come in every day. Are you involved in mentoring at all anymore?
Very much.
Tell us
Very much.
what your day looks like.
I saw two kids this morning, two youngsters this morning. I teach a class at Rhodes College called Habits of Democracy. And young people in the political science or history department who think about being lawyers, want to be lawyers, even while they're undergraduate, they come down and ask me about what it's like practicing law, what they should do. And then if they're in our office, young lawyers here, like they do you, they ask you what it's like to be a good lawyer. What should I do? What should you look for? And that's what Birch did for me, and I spend a lot of time doing it myself. It's important. It's more important now than it was even in my day.
Why do you say that?
Because everything is on such a fast track. If I wanted to go to see Birch and talk to him about anything, I'd go in there and talk to him. Today, if some young person in my office wants to come sit and talk to me, they got to worry about their billable hours. It's a whole different, it's a business now. It's not the profession it was when I first joined it. And now there's still professionals in it, but it's becoming more and more business, just like doctors. And I hate it, but that's the way the world is. You got to make a living.
So how do we do it now? I mean, how do we take into account the business aspect of the law, but still bring the next generation of trial lawyers forward?
Well, you just have to have lawyers in office who are willing to say, okay, I may have to stay 30 minutes longer this afternoon to get this brief written or whatever the task is, the money-making task. But I think it's important to spend this time teaching this young person what they need to know. And even if you don't charge for that young person's time to have them sit with you in the trial, it's important to do that because that's the only way they learn. So many of these kids come out of law school, go into a small firm or by themselves without any mentor, and it's terrible. They had no way to know, and they turn out yelling at people in court, and the civility's gone. And in this office, the worst thing you could do is be uncivil or unfair to another lawyer. I mean, that'd be the worst rap you could get. And the other thing I tell young lawyers when I mentor them, I say, you've only got one thing that is precious to you, that if you lose it, you'll never get it back, and that's your reputation for fairness and honesty. And if I can drill that into them, that's the key thing I try to tell. Don't take a shortcut. Don't think that you can do something and get a little benefit now. It won't hurt you later if it's not appropriate.
Well, let me say that, and they're like I said, there are people from two different countries going to be seeing this, but you and Mr. Birch and Jeff Feidelman have done a great job building a firm that has just that reputation all the way across this state. I mean, people know that Birch, Porter, and Johnson does it right.
Well, that's true, John, but let me tell you, and we have lost some youngsters to other firms, bigger firms or just different firms, who don't feel the obligation for public service or pro bono work or whatever else it is. They want a lawyer to come there and work. And the lawyers make more money. We will lose a lawyer from here to another law firm. They love working here, but they'll make more money somewhere else. And that's just the way it is. And you have to choose what kind of law firm you want to be in. You're not going to make as much money here as you do at a bigger firm or some other firm.
So when you have the time to sit back and reflect over these 58 years, what sort of experiences make you smile? What are the sort of things that just when it's quiet, it will bring a smile to your lips?
Well, most of them are longer stories than we got to tell, but things. I remember trying a railroad case once that we motorist got hit on the track by our train and it looked pretty bad for us. We tried it in front of a jury, and jury ruled for the railroad, and I felt pretty good about it. And I was walking out into the corridor outside the courtroom, and here came the plaintiffs, the the mother and the father and the son who'd been injured, and they all jumped on me and tried to punch at me. They were so mad at the bailiff had to pull them off. That's the only time that I'd ever been so affected by a lawsuit to get a result that probably maybe was not the best result, but that's what my client needed at the time. But I laughed back at it, getting pushed around in the corridor because the clients got so hot about Curtis.
Oh, big.
And then, I had some cases where I had to put Elvis's best man in prison. And that was an interesting experience. And Mob Jimmy Carter. And I remember seeing a co-counsel in a case had been drinking, and the judge came in after lunch, and my co-counsel had been drinking, and he couldn't sit in the chair, and we were kind of propping him up in the chair, and the judge looked over there and saw what we were doing, and he said, "We're gonna resume this case in the morning, bailiff." That's the way the practice was then. The judge was not going to embarrass this guy. Of course, somebody dealt with him, the bar association or somebody else. He didn't. He just drank during lunch, and he came in. And he wasn't prepared to do the case, and the judge recognized that. Oh, I remember that was an interesting thing. I remember I had somebody, a witness in the grand jury, that got so scared of the questioning in the grand jury that he thought he was leaving the room when he walked into a big clothes closet, and he was so frightened to come back that he just stayed in the clothes closet rather than come back in the grand jury room until we could let him out. So those were it. But, a lot of the cases are, looking back on them, they were. But those are hard days in government. I loved it. But, when you get a kidnapping case, as a young woman's been kidnapped, and they've got her up near the Tennessee River, and they're trying to get a ransom, and say you're going to kill them, and you got the FBI trying to rescue her, and you're trying to make sure that you got a witness that's you're arresting one of them, and you got to get them to talk. And the FBI says, "What can we do to get them to talk?" And what you want to say is do what you need to do to get them to talk, but you know that you've got an obligation, and you have to advise the FBI how far they can go, knowing full well that if you quickly don't get that guy to crack and tell the FBI where the girl's been being held by the other people, that she's likely to be killed. And so those are what gave me all this gray hair.
Tell me about, I guess you knew about the college from Mr. Birch.
I knew about the college when I was in high school.
Oh, how did that happen? You beat me and
If you look at the college bulletin, the address book, whatever we call it, the blue book, you'll see that the second president of the college, maybe second or third, was a guy named Cody Fowler. And he was my uncle. And he was the finest lawyer in Florida. And he was Emil Gumpert's main guy. And Emil Gumpert, when he started the American College of Trial Lawyers, came to Cody Fowler because not only was my uncle his friend, my uncle was also president of the American Bar Association. And so Emil Gumpert tied my uncle as president of the Bar Association and a trial lawyer into the concept of the American College. And when Emil retired as president, Cody Fowler became the president. How did I find out about it? Growing up. Once he found out that I was interested in law and history and whatever, he became another mentor. He'd come up and we'd do genealogy work together. And he's the one that told me all about the American College of Trial Lawyers, how it was a special breed of lawyers. And he told me, he said, if you ever become a lawyer, which I hope you do, if you become a desk lawyer, it doesn't count. She said, unless you're a trial lawyer, you're not a real lawyer. That's the way Cody Fowler thought about it. And he had his own law firm there in Tallahassee, Florida, and was both the only person I think that was ever president of both the American Bar Association and the American College of Trial Lawyers, and part of that was at the same time.
Oh, wow.
I'm pretty sure I'm okay on those facts, but in the little history of the college, you'll see that.
So, what year did you become inducted into the college?
1989.
Where was your induction ceremony?
Golly, I think it was at the Cloisters, one of those fancy places down on the coast. And I remember it was a thrill because Griffin Bell was president, I think, of the college or in that mix. And he had been the attorney general that appointed me U.S. attorney for Jimmy Carter. So he'd been my special friend. And so being in the college and having Griffin Bell there with me, getting inducted along with Lucian Birch was a big deal.
How do you remember the oath? The oath always hits me hard to this day when I hear other people being administered the oath. Do you remember receiving that oath?
I remember receiving the oath and standing up with my class and pledging it, but I could not. The oath to be U.S. attorney and attorney general is a little shorter than the oath.
Surprise, surprise.
Should I?
I wouldn't ask you to repeat it. That would be unfair.
I can't remember, but I remember taking it. I certainly do. And at that point, still in my career, I believed, as Cody Fowler did, that if you weren't a trial lawyer, you weren't a lawyer. Now, I know I got friends that never went to the courtroom and that fine lawyers, but that's just the way Cody Fowler brought me up.
You are known and to be a very ethical, honorable person. Sort of, I'm going to call the walking around edition of the Code of Professional Conduct that the American College has. Do you encourage the lawyers in your firm to read the code, to pay attention to it?
I do, and I think it's if you don't start with good ethics, you don't need to be on the playing field. I wrote a book on ethics about the time I was inducted into the college. It was mainly about ethics for people who serve in government positions, which I had. It's based on my government experience up until after I'd been on the attorney general. And then Governor Bredesen appointed me to head up his task force to redo the ethics laws in the legislature. And I spent 2 years doing that while I'm still practicing law. And I have tried, we give something called the Jerry Turner Lawyer's Lawyer Award here. It's based on ethical conduct and civility and courtesy. And I tell the lawyers, it doesn't matter how smart you are, how good you are, if you're not courteous, if you're not friendly, if you're not open, if you're not honest, if you're not ethical, your reputation will never be what you want it to be.
So what other advice do you have for young lawyers? I mean, the young trial lawyer watching this, how do they get to achieve a reputation like yours and have the experience that you've been able to have?
Well, two things. Listening to mentors, listening to people. You have heard of Jim Neal, who was a member of the college, a Watergate prosecutor in the old days. I tried a case with Jim Neal. He was on the other side. I was putting a state senator in prison, and he was representing the state prisoner, state legislator. And he stood up and told the judge, I never will forget that. He said, Judge, I got 10 points in my motion, but I want to talk today about one of them. And what the point was, Jim, the way he handled the motion, the way he handled the trial, he found out what was his real strength. And he honed in on that strength and made it the essence of his case. It didn't spend all of his time just going through a long notebook full of motions or issues. He focused on it and got the jury's attention or the judge's attention. That was a very important lesson to me, and I tell it. The other hand, this is a sort of a joke, I guess. When I'd go with Lucius up to Jackson, the country, Jackson, Tennessee, to try lawsuits for the railroad or whoever it was, I'd go up there with Birch, and I'd say, well, "What are you chewing tobacco for? You don't chew tobacco." He said, "I do when I go to Jackson." And they had spittoons in Jackson. And when Birch tried a case in Jackson, he spit in the spittoon. He didn't do that in Memphis because there weren't any spittoons here. But in the country, there was. He understood that you got to identify with the people that are around you in that courtroom. First thing Birch would do when he walked in a courtroom is he went over and he shook hands with the clerk or the bailiff and had something to say to him, or the sheriff that was around in the thing. He knew that those are the people that eventually might talk to a juror on a lunch break, or say to the juror, might say, "Do you know that guy Birch? You know, is trying this case. What kind of guy is he?" or something. Birch was always working to make sure that nobody that was helpful in the system was left out. It wasn't just the lawyers or the judge, it was everybody in the courtroom that Birch, court reporters. He always called them by their names and courteous. And the other thing I tell these lawyers, which is a little bitty matter, but it's been the most important thing to me, I think, in my career of the minutia, is return every telephone call. Don't delay getting back to your clients or other lawyers. And if you get a letter, answer it. If somebody thinks enough to give you a call, get back to them. And particularly if it's a client, don't just let them hang there wondering what you're going to tell them. Get back to them, or have somebody call them and say, "I'm busy, I'm trying a case." My secretary calls them and said, "Cody's busy trying a case. He's going to probably be out tomorrow morning. He's got your call. He knows he wants to call you, but he's got to get this other thing off his mind first, but he'll call you tomorrow." Those little bitty things, I think, pay off immensely. And particularly today, when so much of our work comes from other lawyers. If you treat other lawyers well, you get responsive to them, you treat them fairly, then it pays off.
Right. Do you, what's your practice consist of today? Do you actively practice, or other than mentoring lawyers in the firm, taking you time to speak with people like me?
Yeah, I do, John. Most all of the work that I do now is mediations and arbitrations. Once I came back from being Attorney General, I had a period of about 8 years where I did a lot of government regulation work, or people that wanted to deal with attorneys general in other parts of the country, or FDA or something, where I used my government experience to help them in the governmental process. And I quit that in July of 2015, now 3 years ago, 4 years ago, because it was all travel. And I'll be 84 in March, and the travel was just more than I wanted to do. And so I gave up that part of the practice. So really it's just, I get people call me for business. I get them a good lawyer here in the firm. Sometimes I try to help them with it, but mainly it's arbitrations and mediations.
Did you run this morning?
I did not, because I got a cold. I was here with you the other day when we got caught in the rain. I think I got the sniffles. You can tell I was stuffed up. But I'll be out there in the morning shuffling. I don't run anymore. I shuffle.
For more than 60 years.
60 years, and when I closed the book this year, I've kept a diary since 1954. When I first started running competitively. I don't know how many years, 54 to 90, over 60 years. I keep it in that book, and I've got 87,500 plus miles since I started. So hoping I can hang in there till 90,000 miles, but it's going to be tough.
That is impressive. That is impressive. Do you have Can you share anything with lawyers about the importance you found to serving in the bar, whether it's with the college and the state committee, or whether it's local bar associations or the state bar, or now with your work for the Society of Attorneys Generals Emeritus? Tell us about your work there.
I just think those, certainly if you take the college, it's not only important for the contacts that you make. I think a lot of people look at the college, you get the book and somebody needs a lawyer from Tampa, Florida, and Memphis, they might give you a call. But the big benefit, I think, is sharing the experiences with lawyers around the country and learning from. And you can't do that unless you're in an organization that brings those people together. If you're in Memphis, the Memphis Bar Association does that. If you're in Tennessee, Tennessee Bar. If you're national, American College of Trial Lawyers, or the ABA. It's the only way you can interlock and relate to other lawyers and learn from them and share experiences, which is the way you grow as a lawyer. And plus, the organizations do a lot of good. I worked with the college on a number of important committees that the college does good work outside of just being a meeting facility.
Well, we've been at this for an hour and 15 minutes. Is there anything you'd like to add here at the end? Any words you'd like to share to your fellows across the United States and Canada?
Well, I'm at the end of I'm in the last lap of my race here, obviously almost 84 years old. The things I think about that I emphasize to you is if you have a good reputation, don't ever lose it. Treat people with civility and fairness, because what goes around comes around, or whatever the saying goes. And you'll be surprised how much easier the practice of law will be if the people on the other side think you're a good person, whether you're treating them fairly, they're going to treat you fairly, most of them. And the other thing I would say, because I've seen it happen so long, don't feel like you had nothing to do in your life but be a lawyer. Your family comes first. Make sure that you get out of the office enough to get exercise, to travel, to do things that give you pleasure. And finally, don't ever let yourself get so stressed and so hung up in the terror sometimes of practicing law and getting good results that you lean on drinking or drugs to get you through a tough period of time. So many great lawyers I have seen destroy themselves because they couldn't deal with the stress of practicing law. Matter of fact, I've seen them kill themselves because they couldn't deal with the stress. This is a stressful profession. It's not easy when you get up in the morning, you got to go down there with clients on both sides and most important things happening in their lives. Their whole life, their future, everything depends on how you perform. Well, that can be a very stressful situation. And if you put yourself in that day after day after day, you must relieve that stress and do it by safe means. And that means your family, vacations, time off, exercise, reading, things that aren't related to the law practices. So,
Mike, I can't tell you how much I have enjoyed this, and it when I've got a lot of things to do during the month of December, like all lawyers do, but I can't think of a better way for me to spend my time than doing this right now. Thank you very, very much.
I enjoyed it, John. I appreciate you taking time to do it. And I think Cody Fowler wanted us to do it.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.